Everything you need is already inside of you. The world would not be what it is without you. When we begin to create change within us, we begin to create change in the world around us. Your journey to becoming your best self as the whole person starts right now.
Hi, and welcome to the Rise Up For You podcast. I'm your host, Leanne DeSanto, and I'm honored to be with you today and super excited to be streaming live to the Rise Up For You Facebook page. And as always, our podcast can be found on all the major platforms. So don't forget to subscribe and like our Facebook page so you know when I'm going live and you can join in on the conversation. Now, as always, this podcast is here to serve you and stand alongside your journey to becoming your best self. So if you haven't grabbed your free Becoming Your Best Self Startup Kit yet, you can do that in a couple ways. You can go to our website, riseupforyou.com, and grab it there. Or you can text RISE PODCAST, that's all one word, RISE PODCAST, to 797979, and you'll be supported both personally and professionally. Now, today's guest is Kris Putnam-Walkerly. Now, Kris is a trusted advisor to the world's leading philanthropists. For over 20 years, ultra-high net worth donors, foundations, Fortune 500 companies, celebrity activists, and wealth advisors have sought her advice to transform their giving and catapult their impact. As a philanthropy advisor, speaker, and award-winning author, she's helped hundreds strategically allocate over $500 million in grants and gifts. Kris has been named one of America's top 20 philanthropy speakers for the past 3 years. She is the author of Delusional Altruism, Why Philanthropists Fail to Achieve Change, and What They Can Do to Transform Giving, and the author of Confident Giving, Sage Advice for Funders. So please welcome Kris to the podcast. Hey, Kris.
Hi, how are you, Leanne? It's great to see you.
Great to see you too. I'm so excited to have you here and learn. This is a new subject for me as well, so I'm super excited to learn more about what you do.
Awesome. I'm excited to tell you all about it.
Cool. All right, go ahead and share.
Yeah, so I'm a global philanthropy advisor. So I advise philanthropists of all kinds and sizes. So that means people like ultra high net worth individuals and wealthy families, leaders of grant-making foundations like a family foundation or community foundation, as well as leaders of Fortune 500 companies that have corporate giving programs. And I'm really trying to help them to have the greatest impact they can have with their charitable giving.
Nice. So tell us how we even go about that, because, I think a lot of us just feel like people give to charities and that's awesome. And, maybe they channel their funds toward one particular cause, or maybe they disperse it across many causes. But what is it that you really advise them on?
Right. Well, of course, every person and every philanthropist is different. But, I think it's important first to recognize that really most of us are all philanthropists, meaning, it sounds highfalutin. You think that refers to billionaires, and of course it does also, but it really refers to anyone who, actively promotes human welfare, people who give of their, financial resources, but also their time or their talent or expertise. And, a lot of us volunteer or serve on boards of directors or give in many ways, whether you're, quite frankly, giving away $1,000 or $100,000. It's still important to think about, a couple questions, really. One is, what do I want to accomplish as a funder, as a donor? What are the issues that I care about or that my family cares about? What kind of impact do I want to have in my community or on the world or my neighborhood? And then, once you kind of get clarity on what that is, because, there's thousands of worthy causes and literally millions of nonprofit organizations around the world to support, getting clarity first on what's important to you and meaningful to you. And then I help my clients figure out, given whatever that is, ending homelessness or early childhood education or access to healthcare, whatever. Then how do you want to go about doing that with the resources that you have? What are the best organizations to support, strategies, ways to have an impact, or even potentially to leverage your resources with that of other donors to create an even greater impact?
Right. So that's So that sounds like that's really the first step for the work you do, and for the donors, like asking those really important questions and going a little bit deeper to make sure that they are going to have the impact that they want to have in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And, it seems like philanthropy is easy, but it's more challenging than you realize. And the book that I wrote, Delusional Altruism, what I write about is how donors are genuinely wanting to make a difference and have a positive impact on the world, but are often getting in their own way and preventing themselves from having that impact. And, that happens in a variety of ways, one of which is, feeling overwhelmed. And, donors and all of us, felt overwhelmed 2 years ago before the global pandemic that we're all living through right now. But, a lot of donors can feel overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of, problems in the world. I was talking to a donor recently about the problem of child trafficking and human trafficking, which is a huge global problem. And she wants to make a difference, but was literally feeling overwhelmed with sadness, about the problem. And if you're so overwhelmed that you can't make a difference on something, then that's holding you back. Or just feeling overwhelmed by choices. You might care about a lot of different issues in your community, and it's hard to pick one or narrow it down or know how to support the right organizations. And, honestly, I work with some of the world's largest foundations, and at a different level or a different scale, it's really the same challenges. You might have a lot of clarity that you want to address substance abuse. I'm just making that up. Yeah. But even within that, there's a lot of different ways you could tackle that. Do you want to address the problem of there's a negative stigma attached to substance abuse and mental health, and that prevents people from getting treatment? Do you want to focus on prevention and helping people never become addicted to drugs, or improving treatment? Or you could tackle the issue of, lack of adequate health insurance coverage in this country for substance abuse. There's lots of different ways you can tackle a problem that are all important, right? And so it's, helping people kind of unpack both, what are they most passionate about and getting excited about, with also what are the greatest needs, and then also, what are the right practices and models that are being proven to be effective that they can, rally behind.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that you said that, getting in our own way, right? Because I think all of us can do that in a lot of arenas of our life, right? It's like, what holds us back? And that's interesting because, I never really thought about that, yeah, it can feel so overwhelming, some of these problems, and there's so many different ways to attack it, and ways to, and different nonprofits you can be involved with. And so definitely it can be a much bigger decision to make.
It is. And I also advise my clients, when you're feeling kind of that overwhelmed, just to start somewhere, pick a topic, an issue, domestic violence, cardiac, heart disease, whatever. And, take some time to learn about the issue, learn what nonprofits are doing really good work in that area, kind of arm yourself with information. And really, one of the pieces of advice I give is to embrace what I call more of an abundance mindset, as opposed to a scarcity mindset. And a mindset of abundance for a donor, I think in many ways means to invest in themselves, meaning like investing in their own learning, in their own, taking the time to develop relationships with nonprofit leaders if there's a nonprofit that they support, really kind of delving into that organization and finding out what they need and how you can help them. But, like that self-investment, I think, is really important for donors. And I don't mean investing in your own yacht, or investing in your, like staying at the Four Seasons in Maui for your board retreat, which is fine if you want to do that. But sure. I really mean like just investing in learning, investing in your own expertise, or getting, people to help you, coaches or advisors to help you with your giving.
Do you recommend that some of these, high net worth donors start their own nonprofits, or are they really, like, how does that work?
Yeah, well, another challenge, delusional behavior that I see among many funders, as well as, quite frankly, all of us, is focusing on tactics before strategy, or kind of thinking about the how before the what. So again, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's important first to think about what are you trying to accomplish with your giving? What kind of change do you want to see? And only then can you possibly figure out how best to do that. You need to know what you're trying to do before you know how to do it. But too often, I think donors jump into the how. And quite frankly, often this comes through conversations they're having with their wealth advisors. And so by that, just to give an example, it might be a wealthy family that says to their wealth advisor, we want to be more philanthropic. We recently sold a business or inherited wealth, whatever it is. I want to start a foundation. And the wealth advisor says, great, we'll get the paperwork going. It's just kind of like this transaction, this kind of focus on the how of giving through a foundation. Well, the reality is when you create a private foundation as a family, you're creating a nonprofit organization, a 501c3 that might need staff. You have to handle the taxes. There's a lot of paperwork. Are you really wanting to manage an organization, or are you just trying to give money away effectively? So there's different strategies. And in fact, Mackenzie Scott, who is the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos from Amazon, is giving away billions and billions of dollars this past year.
Wow.
She's the richest woman in the country, I believe. And she's doing it without any kind of foundation. She has advisors helping her, but she's identifying organizations and then, giving them basically surprise, gifts, large gifts, just through, kind of the checkbook, or maybe it's an online transfer. I'm not quite sure, but there's a lot you can do without starting a foundation. You can also create a donor advised fund, which is another kind of vehicle to use, a giving vehicle to use, sort of like a charitable checking account. So there's lots of ways to give. Again, I try to help my clients think about, what are you trying to accomplish first?
I love that. And I love those questions like, what's your why? And then what's the what? And then the how? Because you're right. Sometimes we get so tied up, again, in every area of our life, right? Especially as entrepreneurs or someone starting a business, or even, ahead of a business, right? It's like, get so stuck in the how and the tactics, but not looking at the overall picture.
Yeah, the other challenge that I think donors and, quite frankly, all of us are having or have had this past year is feeling so overwhelmed by the constantly changing conditions, the apparently never-ending series of crises that we're experiencing. And, it can feel very daunting because the future, is uncertain. And I know a lot of my clients who, need to be creating their strategies or refreshing their strategies, but have been kind of deer in the headlights because they feel overwhelmed. Like, what's the point of creating a plan? Because everything's going to change, right?
Right.
But the problem is then they're just stuck. They're sort of sitting on the sidelines waiting for things to get back to normal. And what I advise really is that, again, changing your mindset and recognizing that, the future is unknown, but it's really no more unknown today than it was last year or last decade or last century. That, uncertainty is ever present. And so rather than allowing this notion of a unknown future to paralyze you, to really let it free you, let that be your kind of mindset shift, because you can't possibly prepare for every scenario, right? So stop trying and recognize that the future is always unknown, that disruption is the status quo, volatility is the status quo, and really kind of lean into that. And I, advise clients to create their, grant making strategy, their philanthropic, giving strategy, their strategic plan by thinking about, creating a plan quickly based on the information you currently have available, and then begin using it immediately for as long as conditions warrant, as long as it makes sense, and then change it rapidly as conditions change. And just assume that conditions are going to keep changing, right? And so plan for it. Like, literally, create your strategy for the year, but build in every quarter, every 2 months, every month, whatever makes sense for you, to check in on your plan, on your strategy, to say, what's changed externally in the world or in our community or in our organization. Has a key person left unexpectedly? things are always changing.
Mm-hmm.
What's changed that would cause us to maybe shift our strategy so that you're always being agile? Your strategy or your plan is always kind of sentient and living and breathing. That really allows you to keep moving, to continue in a forward motion so that you're always guided by a decision-making framework that's based on the current reality with the confidence that you can change things along the way.
Yeah, I love that. The fluidity of it and not being too attached to it at the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Take a long time, I feel like we invested all this time and we have this big strategy and this long-term, goal and vision, but then you're right. What happens if, and we know this year was if, right?
Exactly. And so if your viewers and listeners are interested, I have a guide that I just created about this exact thing, and it outlines 8 things you can do. It's actually called 8 Things Every Philanthropist Can Do to Change the World, Even When the World Keeps Changing. Ooh. And it's a super quick guide that will help you, plan these different 8 steps. And you can go to 8things.org to download it. It's a free download. So that's available to anyone listening or watching.
8things.org. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Because it's important, again, in anything, that people know they're not alone, right? I mean, everyone's going through lots of changes, and it's again getting to the mindset side and the being fluid, having a great strategy and plan, but also allowing it to breathe, allowing, okay, well, if this doesn't quite work, how do we shimmy? How do we go here? And having that built into it. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think, if these crises of 2020 have shown us anything, it's the futility of, taking a year to create your 5-year plan, right? Because by the time you've done that, and that happens a lot in philanthropy, there's a lot of foundations that spend a year literally doing strategic planning. And, and then quite frankly, when it's done, then they spend months beautifully writing this document and graphically designing it and getting board approval. It's literally 18 months before the thing is implemented, and it's out of date. It's been out of date like 12 months.
That's right.
And it's silly. It's unnecessary. And quite frankly, it's wasting a lot of resources and time and money. And in the meantime, you're not guided by a strategy. You know what I mean? Like, you're guided by last year's strategy. Mm-hmm. What people need, especially as we're all working remotely, is you need clarity on, where are we headed? What's most important? What are our top priorities? Who's responsible and accountable for what? And let's make sure this is working and course correct along the way.
Nice. Have you seen that your donors have pulled back a little with everything going on? Or I've kind of heard a couple different things. Some are donating even more, and some may be pulling back or shifting, where the money's going. What have you seen?
Yeah, it's really been a mix. I mean, there's absolutely been a lot of donors that have dramatically increased their giving, and giving in lots of different ways. So many have joined what are called rapid response funds. So in, well over 800 communities in the US and then even more around the world, foundations, companies, individual donors have come together to create kind of pooled funds where anyone can contribute to this fund. But then there's a few, maybe 5, 10 funders that are kind of managing it and identifying, what are all the needs in our community in response to COVID or the, racial reckoning that has happened, especially in the past summer and continues to support racial justice issues. Mm-hmm. Figuring out what are all the needs and then making sure that resources are deployed adequately across different issues. And then it provides the nonprofits kind of a one-stop shop for applying for funding for COVID response and whatnot, and then as an efficient way to deploy those resources. So a lot of people have donated to those rapid response funds. Mm-hmm. And, there's been a huge growth in donor advised funding through Fidelity Charitable and Schwab Charitable and all the others. And a lot of funders have also gotten money out the door more quickly. So instead of having lengthy application processes and extensive review procedures, they've said, hey, we trust you. You need the money. You're doing important work, food bank or homeless shelter or whatever it is. We're going to give you this grant. You do whatever you think is best. And then we'll check in with you later when this is all over, making it much easier. So there's less reporting, less of the kind of cumbersome bureaucratic policies and procedures and hoops that a lot of donors expect nonprofits to jump through, freeing up those resources so they can really do what they need to do and pivot along the way. But at the same time, there have been a lot of donors that have taken more of a wait and see mode and approach and are, kind of in hiding. I think a lot of donors, felt overwhelmed at the beginning of the pandemic and fearful, and so held back. And many of them literally were saying to themselves, well, we'll just wait and see, for 6 months when this is all over,
right.
what happens. And, meanwhile, it's not over. And so that's a problem. So I think it's really important for donors to identify ways that they can, give, especially now, and perhaps even increase their giving from their annual, whatever they typically contribute each year.
Yeah. This is the year, right? This is the year to do that for sure. Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I think that too, it's so beautiful that people are still, again, like you said, the scarcity mentality versus the abundant mentality, right? And just knowing that money circulation, and it's important to keep giving if you can, and to, and I think any amount of giving. I know you work with, the really, really up there high end, but if you have $100 to give, $500 to give, it's giving, it's contribution, it's circulation. I mean, I think it's all energy anyway. So I think it's true for anyone, to find that, what they find their why, what do they want to impact, and even if it's on a super small level, it's so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think also what's proved to be really important is really investing in nonprofit capacity and talent. So a scarcity mindset for a donor is to believe that, well, I want to give to organizations where 99 cents of every dollar goes to help the people it's helping, and only 1 cent goes to the administration or overhead. Mm-hmm. And while that might seem prudent, I think it's actually delusional, because if you really believe in a cause and there's a nonprofit that is doing great work, well, wouldn't you want them to have top talent, a great financial management system, a strong strategy, the ability to evaluate their effectiveness and make improvements, the ability to, a great board of directors to help guide them and steward them. Of course you want all of that, right? Sure. But all that actually costs money. Just like running a business, you invest in your own talent, you invest in research and development. Well, a nonprofit also needs to invest in their own. I mean, we've certainly seen technology, for example. Yeah. And, it takes a lot for, think of some of the arts organizations that have had to kind of, they had their gala planned in person, and they had to pivot and figure out how to turn that virtual. Well, that just doesn't come out of nowhere. You need help to figure that out, right? Then that costs resources. But I think if you recognize that the more you put into the nonprofit, the more you invest in their success, the greater impact they're going to have in the long run. And too often, I think as donors, we kind of expect nonprofits to kind of hamper, just limp along with fully paid staff and, kind of hamstrung, all volunteer. Right. But why? If they're meeting an important need in the community, then you want them to be as strong as they can be.
No, I love that you brought that up, because as we were talking, I was thinking, in the past years, some have gotten into some hot water when salaries of CEOs were released, and people were like, whoa, wait a minute, I'm giving to this. And what? What are these people making at the top? So again, it's that balance, right? Not to be abused, but yet to be able to run it like a business so it can be efficient and do what it's meant to do.
Well, right. And if you think about it, I mean, right, it can be taken to an extreme like anything, but I think don't worry about those outliers, focus on the majority of the nonprofit organizations where people are mission-based, committed, putting their whole selves into these issues and organizations. And, honestly, I mean, if you have a well-paid CEO who's able to quadruple the amount of funds raised for the organization and therefore grow and accomplish more, would you rather pay that person that great big salary, but they're accomplishing so much more and creating such a better impact, or pay a lower salary, get a less qualified person who can't accomplish as much? You know what I mean? And so if you think about it that way, to me, it seems like a no-brainer. You want to invest in top talent so that you can have top impact.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I think that's great. So let's move on to our power questions.
Oh, sure.
All of our guests. So what is one book that's had a massive impact on you?
Yeah, I'd say professionally, a book is $1 Million Consulting by Alan Weiss, which is, he is a mentor of mine, and he is a very prolific author and writes and teaches and trains a lot about consulting practice. And so that was a book that really helped me rethink my approach to consulting.
Beautiful. How about a quote that you live by?
Yeah, put your oxygen mask on first before helping others.
Love it.
From the airline attendants. But truly, we have to take care of ourselves before we can take care of other people. And I think that's applicable in any aspect of our life, personally and professionally.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you could leave the world with one final message, your golden nugget, what would it be?
You have less time than you think.
Do it now, right? Just do it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's, some version of, seize the day and whatnot. But, there's no time like the present. We have to really, if it's investing in ourselves or making a decision or following our passion, at the end of our lifetimes, I'm sure we're going to wish we had more time, right? Yeah. So why not, while we have the time, why not invest in ourselves and do the things that are truly important and meaningful to us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So how can we find and support you?
Oh, thank you. Well, certainly you can buy my book, Delusional Altruism, and it's available on Amazon. And then the website for the book is delusionalaltruism.com. You certainly can download that free guide that I mentioned, which is at 8things.org. It's 8 things every philanthropist can do to change the world, even when the world keeps changing. I think you'll find that useful, your audience. And then, both of those links link to my website. So you can certainly find me there on my social media sites, my email and contact information.
Beautiful, beautiful. Awesome. Okay. So as you know, we are Rise Up For You. When you hear that phrase, what does it mean to you?
I think it means truly living your best life. And, this might sound strange, but I think, the only person who really cares about you is you, because everyone else has some agenda, some need. If it's your child or your spouse or even, your parent, the people who love you the most, I think we have to recognize that, we need to love ourselves the most, and we need to, really be there and take care of ourselves and truly rise up to be our best selves that we can be, and whatever that means.
Yeah, beautiful. That's what we're all about. So love that. Well, Kris, thank you so much for your time today, your wisdom, learned a lot, and I know it really served our audience. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, there you have it. Kris Putnam-Walkerly. Isn't she great and doing such amazing work in the world? And I just loved the questions, your why, your what, your how. I think in anything in life, we focus so much on the how, and we get bogged down in that without really understanding, what are we doing? What's our why? What is inspiring us, right? So I just love that she shared, and I love that it can really translate into any area of your life as well. So as always, we are here to stand alongside your journey to becoming your best self. So please grab your free Becoming Your Best Self starter kit at our website, riseupforyou.com, or text RISE podcast to 797979, because we want to support you both personally and professionally always. Bye for now.